Pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor pro meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Canali, meet Debbie. Debbie. The name sings to me. Debbie. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave and I'm one of the 2 hosts of this special podcast.
And I'm Rich and I'm the other host of this special podcast. Think of me as Andy Dufresne to Dave's Red. I once escaped prison and he's Ginger.
Yeah, that'll do. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we quite often drift off and talk about other things, sometimes movies, sometimes life in general.
And sometimes we do like to drop big fat spoilers to the movies we mention. So if we mention a film you haven't seen, pause the podcast or skip ahead, go clean out your fridge, it's disgusting, and then come back and get on with the episode. Because on today's episode, we are joined by Liam Dempsey.
Liam is a brilliant podcaster that you will know from the Spocklight podcast. If you haven't listened to that, go and give it a listen. It's excellent. You might also know him from talking about film and TV on your local BBC radio station.
We're very excited to sit down with Liam and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Liam Dempsey's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy.
Can you remember the first sequel you ever watched?
I think I can.
Go on then.
Literally been researching this to look back. I've obviously done what we do is open the old letterbox, look through. Like, luckily, I have attempted to record every film I've ever seen in my life on that.
Wow.
Sorry, all of them?
Yeah. So I basically, obviously, there will be some missing somewhere, but like I have gone back through and tried to it because the thing is from a young age I kept like a film diary. Like anyway, so basically,
oh, you're committed.
When I was like obsessed with film from a really, really early age. Like, so when I got my first ever Halliwell's film guide. Do you guys remember those?
Yeah, I do,
yeah. So I bought one of those in 1996, and that was like basically for people who were born after the internet became like a normal kind of everyday thing. These were the gigantic phone books that basically had every film like ever made listed in them, essentially. And basically, I took this book and worked my way through from A to Z, noting down every film I'd ever seen through this book, and like filled up like 2 or 3 notebooks with that, like when I was like 11. And then I added to it from them. And then when Letterboxd came along, I like took all those notebooks and basically put them onto Letterboxd.
Wow.
And then obviously started adding from there. So usually I can look back over things and kind of work things out. And so looking back, I'm pretty fucking sure the first ever sequel I would have seen would have been Superman 2, the Christopher Reeve Superman 2,
yeah.
1980, because I was born in 1985.
Right on, brother.
There we go, yeah. And I was a big superhero nerd, fell in love with Batman and Superman and everything like that. And they would have definitely been some of the earliest kind of franchise films I saw. And when I think about like sequels, because that's the thing in the mid 80s, like we weren't quite living in like the IP oversaturated times that we are now.
Yeah.
And I definitely think it would have been the first proper kind of series I would have kind of watched, because obviously by then it would have been on TV already, kind of thing, by the time I was born and stuff. So it would have been easy to watch. There would have been a hard rotation. So yeah, I think it would have been Superman 2.
Nice. Is that the one with... they always blur in my head. Is that the one with Terence Stamp as General Zod? Is that Superman 2?
It is, yeah. I mean, he's in the first one in a cameo, but in the second one is when he returns. Because the first one, there's obviously that weird prologue where they get like chucked into a triangle space kind of thing. And he says he'll come and get revenge, and he says first on you, and then your heirs. And then in Superman 2. They actually come back and they land on Earth, and obviously they got all the same powers as Superman, but there's 3 of them. So obviously Superman's fucked. And by this point, unfortunately, Superman has just made the grave error of giving up his powers so that he can live a life of love with Lois Lane.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember there is a scene where just after Superman has lost his powers, he's given them up, he goes to a diner with Lois, and there's this like redneck trucker in there, like causing havoc, like, you know, being rude to everyone. And of course, Superman in his Clark Kent persona, being him, is like, oh, sir, you shouldn't do that. And he's like, fucking what? And, like, absolutely batters like Clark Kent. And of course, he's not used to being beaten up because he's Superman. And literally, there's actual blood. And from that, I swear there's a moment where Christopher Reeve, like he feels like the blood on his face. He's like, oh, am I bleeding? Or something yeah, he's like really shocked. And I was devastated as a kid. Like, seeing Superman get beaten up by like some random guy, and especially like blood and everything. It's like quite a savage beating for like a PG film, and it was really shocking, and I was really upset by it. So I've got very vivid memories of this. And at the end, he gets revenge he goes back in the diner once he's Superman again. He spins the guy on his seat so fast he like kind of goes into a hurricane or something.
I have no recollection of Superman 2, I don't think. For some reason, I don't know why. It's Superman 2, this is a weird question, and you would know. Is it Superman 1, Superman 2, and then there's meant to be Superman Returns, and we're meant to ignore Superman 3 with Richard Pryor and Superman 4? Is that what's meant to be happening?
No. Whoa. Yes, I think in terms of Superman Returns, the Bryan Singer...
Yeah.
One, yes, I think that is one of those weird sequels that goes, like, acknowledge the first 2 but none of the others, kind of like with, which is a real, I think they've kind of stopped doing it now a little bit. But it's what Terminator does in every single fucking film. Every Terminator film goes, yeah, we're the first sequel since the first 2.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I'm like, you've literally done this 4 times now. Like, yeah, it's I think that is the case. So Superman 3 and Superman 4 get ignored. I mean, I can see why.
Ooh.
Superman 3 is shit.
Oh, Rich loves Superman 3.
Superman 4 is shit. Superman 3, I will defend.
Controversial.
I've never seen it, so I can't defend. But
I would say both shit, but actually controversial. I actually prefer Quest for Peace to Superman.
That can't be.
I think they're both rubbish, but I actually, because Quest for Peace obviously is the canon one, which is made for about 5p.
Yeah,
and it looks absolutely fucking terrible. Yeah. But I think Superman as the character is more Superman in Quest for Peace than he is in Superman 3.
Yeah,
which is essentially Superman 3 is like Richard Pryor movie with Superman.
That's why I like it.
I mean, when it comes to Pryor, I'm like blue collar or fuck off.
I'm still waiting for someone to pick Superman 3 for me to watch Superman 3.
Just watch it
until that moment happens. No, it's going to be one of those things. Someone's eventually going to have to pick it for some reason, right?
Yeah. So, David, did you just say you were a 1985 baby?
I'm a 1985 baby. Yeah.
How did you not see these films?
I've seen Superman 1, and I've definitely seen Superman 2 because I watched it. Yeah. Going into Superman Returns, but I can't really remember. I can remember The Phantom Zone and Terence Stamp And
you've definitely watched Superman 4, because we've had that as someone's
I've watched Superman 4. That
sequel before.
That's horrific.
Oh, did someone pick that as worst?
Yes.
Sequel.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And we
live
live very close to Milton Keynes, so we found it hilarious that it's all filmed in Milton Keynes instead of in America, because they didn't have the budget.
Could we talk about your little magical book just quickly?
Yes.
So you're a proper geek then, Liam.
Yes.
I love this. How did the film thing? What made that happen? Like, what?
How did I fall in love with films?
Well, because we talk about cinematic awakenings quite often on this film,
Right.
but it's not normally until like our teenage years or whatever, I think. And there's a point when you realise films are bad, because there's a point in your life when you refuse to believe anything that you love that much can be awful. So when did that happen for you?
When did I realise films were bad?
Bad, and when you loved cinema.
And when I fell in love with cinema. So, I mean, really, I think I've got to credit my dad with this a little bit. Like, my dad was a big fan of film. And I would say it probably is him who really got me into films, or made me realise the importance of cinema, quite early on. And he took me to see kind of a lot of classics on the big screen and stuff like that. And kind of, he called it my film education, would force me to watch things and stuff like that. And because of that, I did fall in love with cinema very early on. I knew really early on that I wanted to do something within the kind of filmic landscape. It's definitely I did my degree is in film production. And I knew that I wanted to kind of do that. By the time I was 5 or something like that, Yeah. So that's very much it. I can't remember a specific movie or anything like that would make me thought. It was more in terms of I just feel like I inherited it a little bit, and then I kind of I just went deep dive, fell in love with the medium even more than my dad, and kind of ran with it.
Yeah.
In terms of first realizing when films were bad, I mean, I think I definitely realized it before this, but I've talked about this on Spocklight a little bit. Randomly, when I was 11, my local paper did a thing where they wanted kind of a junior film critic, someone younger, to review films.
Yeah.
And I got the job. I mean, it wasn't an actual job, but it was literally just a case if they sent me as an 11-year-old to see early screenings of films, and I would write a little capsule review, and then and it would be printed in the local paper.
I'm guessing not 18 certificate films at this point.
No.
Cool. Just checking.
But I think the first film they sent me to see was Mel Brooks' Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Oh, okay.
Which was absolutely fucking terrible. And I think because I actually had to write a review of it, I was I know this is terrible. Going this is bad. I remember I was wrote scathing 11-year-old review. That's it. Brooks, it's over. For you.
Liam, what's your best ever sequel?
Best ever sequel. So I was thinking about this a bit. I've got a few honourable mentions.
Cool.
Because we're going to go back to Batman here as well.
Batman Forever?
With this, no, not Batman Forever, unfortunately.
Jason, wait for that one.
But
to come up.
in terms of, before we get to the best, in terms of honourable mentions, The Godfather Part 2.
Yeah.
I think it's an obvious one. I'm sure it's come up as the best, kind of before. But The Godfather Part 2 is an interesting one where I've gone back and forth with it over the years, because it was the received wisdom for a long time that Godfather Part 2 was the superior film to The Godfather. And now that's kind of flipped back around in a way. And I actually have flipped back around on it myself. When I first saw them, I thought Part 2 was better. Now I definitely think Part 1's the one. That's in the first film's in my top 5 of all time. Just absolute perfect movie. And other two that are really big for me are the Nolan Dark Knight sequels. Both of them.
Okay.
Both of them. Very much, because obviously Dark Knight Rises is not as celebrated as The Dark Knight. I completely disagree with that. and genuinely prefer The Dark Knight Rises to The Dark Knight. Like, I think they're both amazing. I think they're both absolutely incredible.
I haven't heard that before.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. I think we're in the minority.
I certainly don't hate The Dark Knight Rises, and a lot of people do hate it, but I don't think it's as bad. I don't think it's as bad as people make out. I don't think it's as good as The Dark Knight, though. Yeah,
like I say, I'm going with better. Like, for me, it's The Dark Knight is absolutely, it's perfect in many ways. But The Dark Knight Rises, it's way more ambitious for me than The Dark Knight. I genuinely think it's the David Lean of superhero movies. Like, it has that gigantic, epic scope that kind of Nolan brings.
Does it pull it off
to his films?
Like,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, he kind of modelled the film on Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, and I think you feel that massive scope in the film, and I just love it for that reason. I think it kind of elevates the material. And I'm a huge comic book fan at the end of the day, but I think for me, Dark Knight Rises, he kind of takes the Batman mythos and takes it to a whole other level of kind of, artistic cinema. Wow. And Bane, I think, is absolutely incredible villain. Tom Hardy, I love the voice. I absolutely love the voice. And I think Bale is just absolutely transcendent in this film. Like, because obviously it's a lot more Bruce Wayne than it is Batman. Yeah. And he kind of totally makes that work, I think. I love all the prison stuff. It's just, there's something about it for me that's just so sprawling and kind of this massive tapestry of a film. Whereas like The Dark Knight is kind of, even though it is still very long, is a lot tighter in a lot of ways. Yeah. But for me, it's like, that's what I love. I love that the rise of this just huge sprawling epic. So I absolutely adore that. And I think it helps that I saw it when it was released at the BFI IMAX. And it was mind-blowing. It was absolutely mind-blowing.
I saw the BFI IMAX, and I don't feel this way, Liam.
Well, there you go. Like, literally, I was just blown away. I was in absolute awe of that film, and I still am. I
had a bad day that day because I went to the Nando's with my brother, and I thought I had a full Nando's card, and then I went to buy my full chicken. They told me it had expired, so I think that might have.
Did that cloud your
judgment? That tarnished the whole day.
I remember being so disappointed.
We need to get you a full Nando's and then sit you down for The Dark Knight Rises again.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay.
So what is your best sequel?
The best sequel is The Empire Strikes Back.
I mean, it's a great pick.
Yeah. It's one. It will also be one of the earliest sequels I ever saw, certainly. I definitely saw the Star Wars trilogy very early on.
Did you see them in the right order? As in those three at the time?
I think so. I think I did actually see them in the right order. And that is an interesting question because, and I think this will be the same for you, that we grew up in an era where often you did see sequels in the wrong order.
All the time. The time.
Whereas people, I don't think that happens now. Like, in terms of like people, because everything's so accessible, if someone's going to watch, they're not going to randomly catch the third film in a series on TV or something like that. But with the Star Wars films, I think I did see them in order. I think my mum and dad were big enough fans of the franchise that they wanted me to see them in order, so I'm pretty sure I actually did.
God bless your parents then.
Yeah. Well, my mum was a massive Star Wars fan.
Wow, really? Okay, cool.
Yeah. She was one of those people who put Jedi on the census back in the day, like everything like that. And
yes.
And she absolutely loved those films. And obviously, like you guys, I would have grown up watching the original versions as well. Although I did see the special editions at the cinema when they came out in 1997.
Yep.
Remember going to see all of them cinema because it was just an opportunity to see the Star Wars films in the cinema, which was a huge deal. And, at the time, I don't think I thought about the differences that much. I knew it was a thing. I knew that the differences were there, but I think at the time, I think you just saw the excitement and the good things about it, in terms of like, you were like, oh wow, he's added like some CGI beast in the background. How awesome.
Well,
like,
CGI was exciting as well. Then,
yeah,
so.
exactly.
True.
It was. CGI was really exciting. We weren't at the point where we were like, fucking CGI.
Yeah.
It's a bane on film's existence kind of thing. Like, at that time we were quite excited by it. And yeah, I saw them in the cinema and just thought, oh, this is amazing, seeing the Star Wars films in the cinema. And then obviously, as time went on, and to be fair, I think the original special editions, I don't think that was that horrendous, apart from the Greedo shoots first stuff. Like a thing, like I think that's the most like egregious thing in the original kind of changes. But I think the problem arose from the fact that he kept going back.
Yeah.
Like kept going back to it. Every single new release, George was back in there under the hood. Going, oh, what can I fucking change this time?
It was VHS, wasn't it? 97, and then there was the DVD re-releases, and then there were the Blu-ray re-releases, and he tampered with all of them.
Every time.
Did it have the Jabba the Hutt scene with Han Solo? Was that in? That was in there.
That was in the first run. Yeah, that was in the first.
I always felt that to be like
is,
really weird. Like, I don't know. Like,
see, that's the thing. At the time, I thought that was really cool because obviously the original version is just like a bloke.
Yeah.
It's like I think like, and so at the time it was like, wow, it's fucking Jabba, amazing, kind of thing from that. But then obviously when you see it a few years later and you realise how badly done it
I was
16
oh, no. I watched those at the cinema as well. I was 16 and I remember watching it going, but doesn't that make what happens in like later on a bit pointless?
Yes.
Like, because why is Jabba so angry with him? He's already seen him. They've already talked it through. Yeah. It's like, what's the problem? It's kind of ruined the rest of the movie.
What's the problem, Jabba?
You know why he did those though, right? Just as he was prepping for Phantom Menace, so he was just seeing what he could do. And I don't know if that's a good excuse or a bad excuse for it.
It's an excuse.
I don't think there's any excuse. I mean, like, in terms of, especially as it goes on. I mean, I think as they go on, it's just the ravings of a lunatic. Like, in terms of by the time you get to him putting the voice of Darth Vader going at the end of Revenge of the Sith into Return of the Jedi, when he goes to save, it's like, what's happening? What's going on? Like, I can't even fathom the thought process that would have led to that. In terms of like, I just think it doesn't make any sense at all.
A great artist knows when to stop, right? That's the thing. Yeah.
But he didn't know when to stop, and it had to literally be wrestled away from him with $4 billion.
Wrestled. $4 billion.
Yeah. I mean, he was fucking complaining about it a year later. A year later, he was making those comments about, the white slavers have taken my Star Wars. After that, I'm like, God. George, if he did all right, mate.
If I got given $4 billion for anything, I'd have been so happy. So, why is the Empire your favourite?
So I think for me, it's so significant in the history of sequels.
Yes.
In terms of, if you list 1980, and I think that this is the time. So this, Rocky 2 and Superman 2, I really think can be considered the first kind of wave of proper IP sequels as we would recognize them today. Because obviously there were sequels before then, like things like the Universal Monster movies had sequels. There were kind of series of comedy films like the Pink Panther films and Carry On and stuff like that. And there were often cash-in sequels to big films like the Planet of the Apes films and stuff like that. But those are not sequels as we know them today. Sequels at that time were considered like a lower art. Usually original stars wouldn't return, or they would, but for a cameo. They were usually made on a far far lower budget and considered like B pictures. There was a lot of snobbery involved. It was usually kind of very much a rinse and repeat type thing where you were like just doing the same story again and stuff like that. I think a really good example is the fact that if you look at 1978, there's Jaws 2. Which is obviously a sequel to what a lot of people consider like the first blockbuster film. But that film is totally of that era in terms of that is a low budget version of Jaws. It's like the B movie version of the original Jaws. And that is not the way that would be handled today. If today you had a film as big as Jaws come out, you would not then make a low budget kind of rinse and repeat version of it as the sequel. You would do something like Empire Strikes Back, where you would go, this is even bigger and more epic, or everything like that. And and those films, Empire Strikes Back, Superman 2, Rocky 2, they all build on the previous film, and they're kind of like going, oh, we're building this kind of like mythic kind of franchise going forward. And because of that, I think it's so important. Obviously, I think if you look at it, it's still to this day, every single fucking sequel film, Empire gets referenced. Yep. In every interview you ever read about a sequel, they go, oh, we're doing a bit of an Empire with this one. We're going darker. And it's going to like, you know, there's going to be a cliffhanger at the end and stuff. But that's still the case for like every franchise film today. And that's insane, like a thing. And it's actually similar for the original Superman the movie, Richard Donner for superhero films. That often gets kind of referenced. It's still such a touchstone. And I think if you go back, and I did recently, was lucky enough to go back and rewatch The Empire Strikes Back for the first time in what would have been a couple of decades, because of the fact that I didn't want to go back and watch the new editions.
Oh, really? Okay.
You couldn't get the old ones, obviously. You still can't, essentially, officially. But Paul from Spocklight managed to get hold of something called the despecialized edition.
Yeah, James Dyer was saying about these as well.
Yeah, I mean, they are, I would, recommend them to everyone. They are absolutely wonderful. These are made by obviously hardcore, super passionate fans who have somehow gone back, and they've got documentaries on the Blu-rays of how they did it.
Oh, wow.
And they've basically used like a ton of sources to make the best HD transfer you're going to possibly get of the original versions of the films. And it's insane how they've done it. It's even watching the documentaries of how they managed to do it, I'm still like, wow, I don't get how this is possible. But it is absolutely amazing. So I got to see on my big 4K TV the original Empire Strikes Back again, and I was completely swept back up. This was literally during first COVID lockdown. I got to see it again. I literally hadn't seen the film in about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I was like, whoa, this still stands up completely. Like, in terms of it is exactly that. It is the reason why it's become the template for sequels, upping the stakes and also making things a bit darker and kind of, bigger character development for the characters. It's got all of that. It kind of, is the perfect sequel. It takes what was there from the first one and just deepens it and matures it in a really kind of natural way. You kind of have everything that you loved about that first film, but it does feel like in those 3 years, George Lucas knew that his audience would have grown up by 3 years, and the film has grown up to account for that, while also still having all that fun and adventure that you had on the first one. And also obviously the twist, which is iconic and kind of parodied a million times, everything like it still is like a jaw dropper. Even now, what's coming, and you watch it and you go, oh my god, to be in the cinema in 1980 unspoiled for this moment dropping, your fucking mind would have blown into a million pieces. It is still one of the greatest twists in
I'd love to have
cinema.
a time machine and go and do that. That'd be one of the things, just to watch everyone's face and be like, what?
Yeah. It's just completely, you're like, holy shit. And just even, I think it's that moment in a way that makes it the most important sequel in some ways, because that kind of thing of kind of seeding something in the first film and then dropping this gigantic twist in the second, that just feels like just such a lightning rod moment for everything that came after. Like, you know, like I would say Empire Strikes Back doesn't exist. The entire MCU doesn't exist. You know, I would go as far as saying that. Like, I think, like, you know, and I really think it's that much of a benchmark, but it's also just an insanely fun blockbuster and just beautifully made on every single level, to the point where it's like, you know, you watch it again now, this despecialized edition, the original effects and everything like that, and they just stand up so incredibly well that you're like, why did you ever touch this? Like, you know, like you said, we know why he did.
Right? Practical effects live on, and CGI ages, and practical effects just keep going.
Yeah. It's 100% true. It's 100% true. Like, literally, you go back and watch any of the films from this era, like the big benchmark movies, this, Alien, Blade Runner, and it's just, you're not seeing like effects that eye-watering like in the cinema kind of anymore, you know?
Yeah, like the Dagobah system, like where Yoda lives, it's just, that set is just insane. I don't think it gets the respect.
Yoda!
Even Yoda was great, and Hoth is an amazing beginning, and with all that, I think it's a very important, like you can say, it's a very important film. And I know Rich loves dark endings.
I do. I was just thinking, I was trying to think of a sequel before Empire that does something different, has a dark ending, and all I can hit on is 1971's Escape from the Planet of the Apes. I mean, it's it's a different type of film.
Hey, even Beneath, really when they destroy the planet,
like, you know. It's
Beneath as well. Like, I think that's totally true in terms of, I mean, both of those films have like crazy dark
yeah, they do.
I mean, funny enough, like Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, the original ending of that's also dark, the original cut of it is also insanely dark. They actually tidied it up for the theatrical and made it less dark, but you can still see the original cut on YouTube, on places on the internet, on the YouTube, which is like, again, insanely dark, but they are, again, part of the thing. They're made on a low budget in comparison with that original film. They weren't, and part of the reason why they've got those insane endings is because no one was like, there was no studio exec going, whoa, what, you're gonna shoot a baby at the end of your film? Like, no, because they were like just considered these like low rung B pictures, and so they could just do whatever the fuck they wanted, going like, you know, and that's why they kind of. Whereas this was going, wow, it's an actual, like, really, like, one of the first times, it's a massive marquee, like, sequel, like, holy shit, everyone's got to see Empire Strikes Back, like, kind of thing, like, you know, it's a massive deal. This is still at a time where a sequel would not be a guaranteed, like, money maker.
No, not at all.
Like, you know, that everyone would turn out for. And it's because of, like, films like this, Superman 2, Rocky 2, Empire Strikes Back, that we basically end up by the 80s actually getting a lot of sequels to movies. So we've got a lot to thank it for and a lot to hate it for, but I think the film still stands. I think it's one of the best sequels ever. Not as good as Return of the Jedi, of course, but it's
Dave.
I love Return of the Jedi, by the way. I love Return of the Jedi. I think it's incredible. But yeah, not as much as Empire.
Empire has got a lot going with Dagobah, Hoth, you know, Boba Fett, the whole fight at the end, and Sky City. It's just an incredible film.
So many glorious set pieces, and like I said, just the whole Yoda character and that entire kind of training sequence is just, you know, you're introducing again one of the most iconic characters in cinema history. And that, again, that puppet still holds up better
than what they did in Phantom Menace. What I love about 100%. Empire Strikes Back, it makes Star Wars is a great film, but once you've watched Empire, once you start looking back at the original Star Wars, you're like, oh, that really dragged, didn't it? That's not as good. But once you get onto Empire, like, fucking hell, this is mentally.
Yeah.
Like,
I think Empire holds up more to a modern audience.
yes, that's a great
I would say. Like, I mean, the original Star Wars, I still absolutely love it, but like you say, that the pace of it is slower. Like, I think like is a slower film. Like now, like obviously it gets going. Like, but certainly the first like act is a lot slower. Whereas Empire, I think it's pretty fucking pacey when you actually think about the amount of incredible set pieces that are in there and the amount that they pack in story wise. It's I think it stands up in terms of that.
What's your favourite scene then?
I think it's got to be the battle at the end between Luke and Darth at the end of the day, leading to "I am your father." I think just the epicness of it is just insane.
Yeah.
Like, and it's obviously it's kind of like it's round one of what will come back in Return of the Jedi, but it's when Luke is essentially really not ready to face Darth Vader. So it's an actual really tense, scary fight. It's a really intense scene because he just feels like he doesn't feel the match for Darth Vader yet.
Yeah.
And hence getting his fucking hand cut off at the end of the day. Like, and I mean imagine that as well. It's not only the thing of he reveals his father, but he's just cut his hand off as well. Just like he's going like, oh, I've not only done this, but by the way, I'm just to make it worse, I'm your dad as well. Like, it's stunning.
Pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor pro meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
What has been the most disappointing sequel? So it doesn't have to be a bad sequel. It's not your worst sequel, but what is your most disappointing sequel? So you went in high and you came out low.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've got a few.
I love this.
For this. I've got a few. I really tried to kind of nail it down. And I think ultimately I do know what the most disappointing is, but I have got a few. So there's A Good Day to Die Hard.
Yes.
The fifth Die Hard.
That's good.
And obviously, I really thought about this in a kind of scientific way, because disappointing for me, to be a disappointment, you have to expect it to be good.
Yeah.
Like in terms of, so there's loads of sequels that you've seen where you've gone like, well, you knew it was going to be shit, didn't you?
Yeah.
Or you knew it wasn't going to be very good and stuff like that, or you didn't expect much of it. Whereas A Good Day to Die Hard, I remember at that point, I'd really liked all of the Die Hard films, and I include 4 in that.
Hey, 4's all right.
Because, 100%. I agree, because, again, me, Paul, Matt, my Spocklight guys, we went to see Die Hard 4 together in the cinema when it came out. Genuinely, still one of the best cinematic experiences of my life in terms of, we went to see it on opening night. It was a packed house. And obviously, at that point, there had not been a new Die Hard film for over a decade. And clearly, everyone in that cinema had all grown up with the Die Hard films. And the audience was just all in for the film, and it was a really fun movie. Like, we really enjoyed it, and I remember specific moments that just blew the fucking roof off. Like the moment where the motorbike goes through the helicopter, and he's like, "You just killed like a helicopter or a motorbike or whatever," and like all that kind of stuff. Everyone was going crazy, and when, like, I remember, obviously, you have the moment in it where because it's like a 12A or whatever, he shoots himself when he's saying yippee-ki-yay. But you know what? I actually, because they do a similar thing in A Good Day to Die Hard, which is awful, I actually think they made it work in Die Hard 4, because I actually think the way they constructed it of, he's going to shoot himself, he's going to try and say his classic line, and then he's going to be in too much pain to like finish it. I was like, that's pretty badass, actually. And what happened in the cinema, because I think everyone knew that was going to happen, everyone just shouted it
Oh, wow.
when it happened. So he started saying, everyone just went, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!" Like in the cinema. And so it was just like amazing. And because of that, I think because Die Hard 4, when the reviews came out, they were pretty like sniffy and stuff like that. So I think we were prepared for sniffy reviews and actually the film to be good again. And I remember the trailers for A Good Day to Die Hard. I actually thought were really good. Like, I remember there's a trailer to it, which has got like the piece of classical music that's used in a lot of Die Hards to it, and it has loads of like great lines from McClane in it, which are very, very McClane lines. And I was like, oh wow, Bruce Willis on form. It doesn't even look that bad that he's got like his son fighting side by him. He looks fine. Like, you know, it looks like the action's there. Oh, I'm well up for this. It's gonna be great. And it was absolutely terrible, obviously. And that was really gutting, because I think also it's that thing of going up until that point, all of the films were good. And to get one that was that bad was just like, oh no, why have you studied it? Especially as obviously there's only 4 lethal weapons, and I personally like all of the lethal weapons.
Yep.
I like all 4 of them.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was going up until then, it would be going Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, which were kind of like I think when we got the 2 big action franchises.
Yes.
In many ways. And I think because of that, you were like, right, okay, you're 4 for 4, and then it was like, oh no, now you've got that one. I think it's even worse now. We know there'll never be another Die Hard.
Yeah.
Like, you know, another Die Hard with Bruce Willis in the role. There may be another Die Hard film. They may try and reboot it or whatever. But because that's where John McClane, as we know him, will be left at the end of Good Day to Die Hard. And that kind of guts me. And so that's one, definitely. For my Star Trek bona fides, Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah, thought it was coming, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've obviously talked about that on Spocklight.
Yeah.
But the first one, Star Trek 2009, the first JJ one, was just an absolute blast at the cinema. It was just so much fun, completely revitalized that franchise in the cinema, brought in a new audience, huge success. I think, you know, I've seen it more times now for the podcast, and I think as I've learned more about Star Trek itself, like I've seen the flaws in that film, but I still love it. It's still great. Into Darkness just felt so slapdash in comparison, and a massive step down. And it also just completely fell into all of the traps of like bad IP filmmaking, like the whole bullshit Khan thing.
Oh, because who is that even for? Like,
yeah, literally, you're meant to be introducing a new audience to this stuff. Like, what?
But also,
no one gives a fuck.
Like, no one in the thing knows who. The whole thing in Wrath of Khan is that Kirk knows who Khan is. Like, they all know who Khan is. They've all heard the legend. And in this version, they don't know who Khan is. So when he says, "My name is Khan," they're all like, "Oh, I don't give a fuck."
Great. Like, yeah. Sure, okay. Fine, like, yeah, but that's the thing, is his character isn't like Khan at all.
No.
Anyway, so it's like, again, why? It was that weird era of, and there was a lot of other films that did this. Another example being Spectre, Blofeld, where in the promotion they refused to admit that it was this, even though everyone was like, well, no, it probably is, isn't it? And they were like, no. So Cucumber Patch would be like, I'm playing John Harrison in the film, like a thing, like, yeah. And Christoph Waltz would be like, I'm playing whatever the fuck his stupid character in Spectre was called. And then, obviously, in the film, at a certain moment, they go, well, I am this guy. Yeah, we fucking know. We knew you were going to be that character.
We all knew.
Like, it doesn't mean anything.
We're not stupid.
No one gives a shit. Like, it's like you say, it's just within the actual context of the film, it doesn't mean anything. It's just for, like, what you just want some fan in the back row to spaff his pants, like, and then, like, what everyone else, like, just goes, what's going on?
I'll give it to Into Darkness, though. The one, it does subvert that every odd-numbered Star Trek movie is shit. you know, because it's the second one, so it's an even numbered one. So, you know,
yes,
it flips that on its head at least.
Yeah, I mean, but I've got to say, I mean, I disagree with that kind of notion anyway.
He's got to get that
going through them, but yes, Into Darkness, that was not good. But I think that there's a few others, but I think the most disappointing, 100%, has to be The Matrix Reloaded.
Yes.
And now I know there is weirdo revisionism about the Matrix sequels.
Not in this podcast.
Where I feel it's a younger generation who grew up with those films on DVD and stuff like that, who have tried to reclaim those sequels and say they're all amazing. Actually, The Matrix Resurrections is the best Matrix film and stuff like that.
Nope.
But the first Matrix film is a masterpiece. It is one of the greatest blockbusters ever made.
Yeah, Rich.
When I saw it in the cinema, I was like, this is absolutely groundbreaking. I remember feeling the sweat on my fingertips watching that film. It was unlike anything you'd ever fucking seen. And I cannot tell you the hype there was going into The Matrix Reloaded. It was like, holy shit. This was like the most anticipated franchise film since The Phantom Menace. 100%. And it is what it is. I don't think it's bad necessarily. I think there are parts of it that are bad. Yeah. I think overall there are elements of it that are impressive in their own
the car chase.
way. The freeway chase, even though I would say you watch it now and there are parts of that chase that look bad, like, you know, that look like proper green screen bad. But
is it the white men with the dreadlocks? Because that's never a good look.
No, it's just the green screeniness of it all. However, sometimes there are things where, yes, obviously CGI affects age, and sometimes you just have to look at the execution of a scene rather than how the effects of age. And I think there are some well executed action sequences in that film that have just aged poorly due to the CG kind of thing. Like, you know, I think things like the Burly Brawl and stuff like it's definitely a cool idea, and there are parts of it where you're like, oh wow, that's amazing, but then there are parts that look like a PlayStation game. So, you know, but I can tell you that seeing it in the cinema was a pretty big come down experience. And it was kind of like you were kind of questioning life itself, like watching that film. I remember standing outside after it ended with some mates who I'd gone to see it with, and we were a little bit bereft, I think, like, you know, in terms of, we were like, it's that thing you try to come to terms with it, where I think there was you were so hyped up for it, you didn't want to admit that it wasn't great.
Oh yeah,
it's just like it was, but you were in a bad place, especially as obviously you stayed to the end, and there was like the trailer for the next film at the end of it, and like you were like, oh, okay, does that look good?
No.
Really?
No.
Oh, and like, you know, obviously there was like, it ended with a cliffhanger, and the cliffhanger was shit. Like, you know, who cares? And yeah, I don't think I'll ever experience like disappointment like that at the cinema again, because Phantom Menace was obviously 4 years earlier. But number one, that's a prequel, so I don't know if that counts. Number two,
we'd count it.
Okay, but number two, I don't think I was old enough yet to quite quantify how bad Phantom Menace was when I saw it in the cinema. Like, I think I saw it and was like, I knew that it wasn't amazing, but I was like, you know, still in that place. It was like, oh, it's all good. It's good. Yeah. It's good. Like, yeah, it's like, and then you realise a couple of years later, oh no, it was bad, wasn't it? Like, yeah.
I love how Dave has been nodding and smiling along to your stories of disappointment as you leave The Matrix Reloaded.
It's my pick,
Did you see
isn't
it at midnight, Dave?
Yeah. This is a famous story on this podcast.
Day.
I worked in a bowling alley, and there's a cinema above us, and they let us go and watch the Prince when they ran the Prince, basically.
Oof.
So it was always like a few days or sometimes 2 weeks before the films came out. So you get the call, you say, they're showing the Matrix tonight. You just round up as many people as you can. I was like, guys, Matrix 2, it's going to be amazing. Bigged up. They weren't big film fans, a lot of them. And then once you come out at like 2:30 in the morning, and they just look at you and you think, oh, I've got to pay for this at some point. And it is like a breakup, like a bad breakup. Like I'm never. It's going to be hard to learn to love again, isn't it? After that one, and especially when it came to Matrix 3, I was like, I don't know.
I think the Matrix movies are a steady
go.
decline downwards, right? They're a steady kind of worse and worse until you get to the most
I think
recent.
Revolutions is the worst. But Revolutions was not a disappointment in the same way Reloaded
because you knew it was going to be shit.
Because I knew it wasn't going to be.
Your heart had already been
still
broken at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Reloaded is the disappointment. Like Revolutions and Resurrections, I never expected to be good kind of thing. I think Resurrections, there was a time when the first trailer came out for Resurrections, there was a moment where you're like, is this gonna be good? And then I think quite quickly I was like, no, it's not gonna be good, is it?
No.
And then I mean, it's one of those things where I'm like, is Resurrections the best sequel to The Matrix? Maybe. Does it matter? No, because they're all not good. It's that's the whole thing in terms of it literally is. I genuinely don't get, and that's the thing. I've defended some sequels here which I love, which other people don't. I guess Matrix is exactly that. There's people who absolutely love those Matrix sequels. There's people who love the Star Wars prequels.
Oh yeah,
true.
It's their Star Wars.
There's a whole. And I do think it is the thing of a generation after us grew up with those films and saw them as kids. And now it's like, well, no, that's it. They're kind of set in their mind as being great.
Yeah. I think Attack of the Clones helped me to reevaluate Phantom Menace, because there's nothing as shit as Attack of the Clones, is there? It's like, I was like, actually,
Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace, both bad, I would say. I genuinely really like Revenge of the Sith. Genuinely really like Revenge of the Sith. Still not up there, obviously, with anything with the originals, but I think Revenge of the Sith is a genuinely good film. It's got some terrible CG in it, like all the others, but it goes hard.
It's definitely
it goes hard.
The prequels.
By the end, 100%.
I think it does what it needs to do, answer in those films, because it comes to the points you want to know why Yoda went to the Dagobah system, the Order, whatever, the big fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I mean, you're sitting through that film waiting for those moments.
Yeah,
the death of Padawan. The birth of the twins.
I think if they pull it off by that point, and I think McGregor really pulls you through the whole film as well.
100%.
That's when he comes alive.
Him and his beard do lots of heavy lifting in that film.
Yes, 100%. So I think Matrix Reloaded, I think, is the unbeatable zenith of disappointing sequel. For me, there's a few others. I'll throw in Pitch Perfect 2.
Don't really care.
Literally, this is exactly it. I went into Pitch Perfect not caring.
Oh, okay.
And ended up coming out going, excuse me, genuinely. And I ended up rewatching that film so much. It's a super fun movie. So I think I was like, oh wow, you've completely won me over. I'm all in. And then I said it was bad straight away. Jack Reacher, Never Go Back. They should have never gone back. Yep. And also, my final one, and weirdly, this makes it seem like Noel Clarke is a signifier of disappointing sequels, because Brotherhood, the third in his
I've watched all of them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I genuinely got a lot of time for kidulthood and adulthood, but Brotherhood was awful.
He was just looking for an excuse to finish a trilogy at that point.
Yeah. I mean, it's good he did now, as he'll never work again, but...
Yeah. Move on.
Yeah, but of course he's in Into Darkness.
Yeah.
In the own series. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Like, so yeah, maybe it's good he can't infect any more sequels.
Oh God. Anyway, moving on. What is your worst ever sequel?
Okay, so
Strapping Rich.
Worst ever. I think
Have you got honourable mentions on this one?
There's one honourable mention. I think the worst ever is so
mention, right?
yeah. The worst ever is so unbeatable that I think there was only one other thing I could think of mentioning. The dishonourable mention is Halloween Resurrection.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Yes.
Buster Rhymes.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched all of the Halloween films. I think basically when Halloween Ends was coming out, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to watch them all. And I watched the whole lot. And Halloween Resurrection is just absolute turgid awfulness. But the real reason why it's absolutely awful is the opening sequence, which kills off Laurie Strode. That it's just such, it's just pissing on the dead corpse of that character. I mean, obviously, thank God they actually brought her back and ended up doing another thing where they ignore all the sequels later on. Because if that had been the last you ever saw of Jamie Lee Curtis in that role, it would have been absolutely terrible. The whole, I mean, don't even get started on the kiss. What a living fuck is going on? But yeah, absolutely terrible. But I will say it's not even within spitting distance of my worst sequel of all time, which is Police Academy Mission to Moscow.
This is a thing. Like, I cannot believe this film was made in 1994. Like,
yeah.
But it's like it's made in 1964. Like, it's ridiculous. Oh God.
Are you guys fans of the Police Academy franchise?
I know. Well, this is a complicated relationship. I want to know yours first. Are you a fan of these films, of all 7?
I would say that I am a fan of the Police Academy films.
That's a good start.
I grew up with the Police Academy movies. I think you've got to be of a very certain generation if you did grow up with the Police Academy films. But I did. They were on literally ITV like constantly.
All the time.
Literally, I swear, like every week they were on. And so, and obviously they would 100% appeal to a young boy at the end of the day, because they are very silly, slapsticky comedies, which also are a bit fruity. Yeah. In a kind of Carry-On-esque, where there's a little bit of hints of kind of sexual stuff, titillation, like within it. So for a young boy, they're kind of like perfect. And I, had great time with those movies growing up. But actually, even then, I knew Police Academy Mission to Moscow was shit. I knew that was bad. That, in fact, funny enough, that may have been the film that made me realise that some films were bad. Because I think I saw that on like VHS when it came out on VHS, because I was already a massive fan of those movies. I didn't see it at the cinema, but I remember seeing posters for it in the cinema. And by then, I was like a massive fan of the Police Academy films. And of course, the best thing about the Police Academy movies are the Drew Struzan posters. The Drew Struzan posters are incredible. Yes. And obviously they had the new poster for Mission to Moscow up in my local cinema. And I was like, oh my God, a new Police Academy. Because it's that time when obviously the only way you'd hear about a film was seeing a trailer at the cinema or a poster. And I was really excited. I remember getting it on VHS from the local video shop, probably like when it first came out on VHS. And I definitely knew it was bad straight away. And this is, bad in comparison with the others. Yeah. Which are not great works of art at the end of the day. But like I say, I mean, I am a fan, but it is through the fondness and nostalgia for them. I would say that the first 2 films are the only ones that could be described in any way as good. And even then, that might be generous. But like the first two, I do generally like.
I have a soft spot for Citizens on Patrol, but it's not good.
Citizens on Patrol.
Yeah, it isn't good. It's just because it's the first one I saw, and I kind of have a bit of a soft spot for it. But it's bad. Like they're all bad.
Yeah. Oh, I can see that completely. I think Back in Training was the first one I saw, and was the third one. And I think for years I was like, "Oh my god, that's the best sequel!" Like it's of Police Academy, not the best sequel. Imagine that. Imagine if you asked me what the best sequel ever was. I pulled out that Police Academy 3, Back in Training.
And we would have listened to you talk about it. And
I was like, I thought you were about to say you would have ended the call.
No. The problem I have with all of these is that I don't know which one's which.
They all kind of do.
We could go through the whole lot
because they came out one after another, didn't they? It was like 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, and the Mission to Moscow was 94. Like,
it's 5 years later. Yeah.
Could you just, before we talk, what is the storyline of the seventh one? Because I was very confused what the fuck was going on in it. Something about a computer game.
So, yeah, there is. I think there is something about a computer game going on. It's from what I remember. I mean, I've tried to forget.
You see, we've watched this. So.
We both just watched it this weekend.
My God. So from what I remember, the Russians are essentially looking for help with some mafia members and the police from the police academy for some reason. So the cadets all go to Moscow, and then there's the villains got a computer game that everyone in the world is playing somehow, and they get caught up in that plot, something like that.
And the villain is Ron Perlman.
Yes, Ron Perlman is the bad guy.
The opening of this film is me getting confused when there's a guy playing the computer game on the Game Boy without a game in it, and that's when I text Rich and I was like, what the fuck? Then Ron Perlman came on the screen. I was like, what the fuck? And then Christopher Lee came on the screen, and I was like, what is going on?
But Christopher Lee famously would be in any old shit, right? He just said yes to everything.
He's got like more credits than anyone ever, hasn't he, or something? Like, he was the Eric Roberts of his day.
He is. And like you said, I'm amazed how many of the actual original cast are back in this one.
Oh, yeah.
You're saying like that's a normal thing. It's...
most of them are back. I mean, obviously, you haven't got the Goots.
Yeah.
You haven't got Gutenberg. That's the big problem. And say what you would like about Steve Gutenberg, but hey, the series could not survive without him.
He's still saying there's going to be an 8.
Yes, I know. He loves coming on going, yeah, we're still working on that 8th Police Academy film. I mean, fucking hell. Like, it's one of those things. It is similar to the Carry On series.
Yes.
I think the Police Academy films. Obviously, with Carry On, it's a different kind of story in every film. But the Police Academy films feel like the first one could have been called Carry On Police Academy, and then just carried on with that storyline, throughout. They do feel like the closest thing America has to that kind of series. It's very similar kind of bawdy humor, and kind of it's got it's weird considering like they were all made in the 80s, and obviously the Carry On films are like the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. So Police Academy, I think, even when it's been made, felt like a bit of a throwback. I think even when they were coming out, people turned their nose up at them, at these kind of like sex comedy kind of escapades. And I mean, I think Mission to Moscow is significantly worse than any of the other films, and that's saying something in a series which has some bad movies in it anyway.
Considering it's supposed to be a comedy, I genuinely did not laugh once.
No.
There were no laughs in this movie.
Not even to laugh at.
No.
It's devoid of any
slapstick
humor.
is normally funny, and there's just nothing. There's just nothing.
I found myself getting angry with Michael Winslow, and in the early films, he was my favourite thing, doing all the voices.
Yep.
And watching, I was like, stop getting in the way of the plot, basically.
I mean, we don't want the plot to happen in this film because it's absolute garbage. But this is the thing, like, that film is so horrendously bad that it somehow almost elevates the other films, like, because you're just like, well, they look like fucking Citizen Kane compared to Mission to Moscow. So it just, and the others at least, I mean, it's funny, we covered Assignment Miami Beach on Spocklight, because yes, that's the fifth one, yeah. Because Rene Auberjonois plays the bad guy in the film, who is a regular in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And that film is also really, really bad. Really, really bad. I'd say that's the second worst one, Assignment Miami.
Oh, really?
Beach. Yeah, I think so. But even then, in like comparison to Mission to Moscow, it still feels like there's a massive dearth between them in terms of, you're like, Police Academy 5, bad film. Police Academy Mission to Moscow, worse than death.
Yeah. Well, it's currently got 0% on Rotten Tomato.
I think most of them have. I think almost all of them have. I swear, like, it's like the first two get like 8 and 7 or something, and then the rest are like all 0.
They must be just made for peanuts. How did they get to 7 of them?
They were successful. They were successful. This is the whole thing.
Made,
like,
yeah,
you know,
they made money, didn't they?
The Police Academy films were successful because, like you say, they were made for low budget.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so what you get. So for good example, the first film made for a budget of 4.5 million. The return 149.8 million. So that with the profitability is insane.
Well, they must have made this last one for like 1p, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, quite possibly. I mean, I don't, but literally, obviously, as they went along, that would have been going down. Like, by the time you get City Under Siege, we're getting a box office of 33.2.
Hey.
So it's, you know, it's going down like throughout. But when you look at the gigantic return that first film, and they were knocking these out every single year, and there was an audience for them at the end of the day. Like, I grew up watching these for a reason. They were kind of, you know, on all the time. And people, there was an animated series, there was a TV series,
I remember the
there was a comic book. There was, you know, everything. And I still have a real fondness for the series in general. But this one is horrific. I've got the box set. I've got the Police Academy box set. Like, but this one it's take this out and use this as a coaster time, because you're never going to watch it again unless you want to kind of, you know, unless you're actually being inflicted to some kind of torture or something like that.
We watched it for you.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Not only did we watch
you
it,
seen it before?
No, I hadn't seen it before. Not only did we watch it, but we couldn't get it anywhere, so we had to pay for it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. It's not. I can see it's not available. Like,
I was delighted when Callahan was still in it. I was like, because that was when I was a big thing, and I was like, oh, brilliant. And then
Leslie Easterbrook.
Yes. Yeah. And that wasn't as magical as it used to be.
It was because it was 1994. You know, it's like, you know, don't get me wrong. She in the 80s, she was a lovely looking woman. Like, I think, but by 1994, you know, the rose is starting to wilt. Unfortunately, like, you know,
was it Kim Cattrall in the first one?
Yeah, she's the girl in the first
love
one.
interest.
Yeah.
Maloney's love interest. Yeah. Okay.
Is there a blowjob joke in there? Is that the first one?
There is a blowjob joke in the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. There's plenty of blowjob jokes in the first one.
The dance in the gay club, is that the first?
Every film.
I could be describing any of these.
Yeah. Literally, the Blue Oyster Bar is what you're talking about. Whereas in literally, I think maybe Mission to Moscow, they don't have that. But on all the other films, at some point, someone will fool someone into going to the Blue Oyster Bar to be like, yeah, and they'll walk in and immediately be accosted by a bunch of men in leathers who will start kind of dancing with them, like the tango, with like roses in their kind of mouth, everything like that. So it's very much playing on like gay panic and stuff like that of the time. But I've got to say, the whole that's the thing, the Blue Oyster Bar gag, every time it cracks me up. every single time, because I think for me, it's one of those things. It just feels so innocent. It doesn't actually feel to me like homophobic or anything like that, because the joke is essentially on the people who are coming in and they've been grabbed and then they dance, and it's all, so it's like I say, it's this, they do the tango with them and they've got like, you know, a rose in their mouth and stuff like that. It just seems like innocent and just fun, and like, you know, a bit silly. Whereas there is some kind of grotty elements of like the film, certainly. But yeah, the blowjob joke that you're talking about is in the first film, where there's someone under the lectern.
Yes, that's the one I remember.
Give Lestrade, like Lestrade, even Lestrade is the policeman from the Sherlock Holmes stories. Like, giving him a blowy underneath, and it is very funny.
Yeah. Last question. They're in Russia, right? Was that filmed in Russia, do you reckon? And
no, it's not filmed in Russia. Come on.
That's an interesting question.
And the accents, were they all like, no one speaks Russian? They're all speaking American kind of thing.
Let's have a look. Was this actually shot in
it was.
Russia?
I take it back. It was, filming location was Moscow.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was. And I was like, how did they get permission for... It must have been tax evasion or something, rather.
Yeah.
I think America and Russia were trying to get on at that point, then, weren't they? Wasn't that the end of the Cold War?
And this is how they ended the Cold War, with Mission to Moscow.
We ended the Cold War with Police Academy Mission to Moscow, and that's all I'm going to hear on the subject. This ended the Cold War.
Yeah. I mean, Yeltsin was a huge fan.
Yeah,
at the end of that.
I bet it was. What sequel seemed like a bad idea, but you ended up loving?
Oh, right. Let me think about this for a second, because this question I forgot about completely. So I'll need to remind myself and think about that.
That's all right. We sort of call it the Fast and Furious question.
This is the one that gets a lot of people, to be honest.
I think when I think about it, I think it probably does have to be Rocky Balboa.
Great pick.
Yeah.
Because in terms of, not that I wasn't against Stallone making that film,
right?
But I think it was a case of, at the time, Stallone's career was in the doldrums. He was at his lowest ebb. He was now starring in kind of, you know, close to straight to video type fare, and I just got into it. It was around Rocky Balboa. It was a couple of years before Rocky Balboa. I think I'd really got into those movies. Yeah, actually, yeah, it was probably about 5 years before it came out is when I'd watched all the Rockies and really kind of fallen in love with that series. And I think there was a part of me that was excited about it coming back, but at the same time was like, is this going to be shit? Like, especially in the sense of the last Rocky film we'd had was Rocky V.
Which was shit.
So we'd left off on a bad note. Stallone hadn't done anything for a long time that would make you think he was still capable of turning out a great film.
Even the good stuff he's in, I would say that would...
He's not... Yeah, there's nothing he's
even
good...
Even the good stuff he's not great in.
Well, see, I'm a massive Sly fan. And I think when he is good, he's great.
Okay.
Like, in terms of, I think original Rocky, Creed, Copland.
Creed's very good. Yeah, Copland's very.
I think he's fantastic. I think he is an actor who can be guilty of sleepwalking through parts and stuff like that. But I think when he's committed, I think he's actually really good.
Because the early 2000s, that's his lowest ebb, surely. Because he's got
he's in the doldrums.
Get Carter,
he's in the doldrums.
Driven.
Yeah.
He's in Spy Kids 3.
Yeah, Avenging Angelo, all that stuff. Yeah. So it wasn't looking good. And I remember seeing the trailer, and I remember being hyped up by the trailer. And it was one of those ones I really wanted it to be good, but I think I had like just a bad feeling in the back of my head that I was like, please let it be good. But it probably isn't going to be, is it? And then we went to see it. And I went to see it with Matt, funnily enough, at the cinema. And again, it was like a packed screening and actually quite a small screen. Because at the time, I don't think people expected this to be a hit at all. It was really something that came along and proved people wrong. Like, in terms of, because people really thought Stallone was done. And it was a hit. It was a big hit. And it came out, and everyone, it was like being in a boxing match, that cinema screening. By the time it got to the final fight, everyone was like, "We love you, Rock!" Like, like really going for it. And I absolutely loved Rocky Balboa, and I still prefer it to Creed at the end of the day. And I love Creed. I think Creed is fantastic. I really, really love all the Creed movies. But I kind of think, for me, Creed was, and again, I kind of throw Creed in a bit in terms of, I think, there was a chance of that not being good as well. And then it was like, holy shit, that's amazing. But I actually think with Creed, you expected it to be good more just because Ryan Coogler was this really hotshot young director who'd made Fruitvale Station beforehand, which had been a real indie smash. And Michael B. Jordan was really coming up as an actor. And so it actually felt like they had the juice more than Stallone did. Made Balboa. So I think Rocky Balboa, being as fantastic as it was the bigger surprise. And I really do, because like I say, I think that as brilliant as Creed is, I think that Coogler is pulling a lot of stuff from Rocky Balboa into that film. And I think a lot of it, kind of the tonally, is very kind of similar to kind of Rocky Balboa. And it really does feel like it is carrying on. There's literally like parts of Rocky Balboa that they really pull through onto Creed to be like, which they didn't have to, especially as Coogler's writing the screenplay to Creed, whereas Stallone is still very much writing the screenplay to Rocky Balboa. So I think that's got to be the one in terms of, I absolutely loved it. Like, in terms, it's my second favorite Rocky movie after the first one. And I definitely didn't think it could be, at that point, that amazing that it actually was. So I think that I was so blown away by. I think that's probably the right choice.
I think it is as well, because like you, I was in the cinema screening what sounded just like your one, and people were hyped for it, and it was so good fun. And like you said, I think what happens in Rocky Balboa kind of represent what Stallone was going on in life as well. I mean, he still had something he had to get out of him, and that's metaphor for the film pretty much. And by the end of it, and he saw his reception, he's probably thought, okay, I don't have to box anymore. Would be good. But yeah, when you started reading about that film before it came out, and you found out that they're not bringing back Adrian, and they're starting off with it, you're like, what? No, Adrian? That's such a massive part, especially when you haven't got Apollo Creed anymore, and especially when you're following what was Rocky V, which was a dumpster fire of a movie. I was like you. I was like, okay. And then the trailers started. Do you remember the trailers? And I don't know.
I really vividly remember
the music,
the main trailer. Yeah, the Conti came on, stuff like that. And I remember seeing that trailer and watching that trailer a bunch of times and being like, it was one of those things. It was a really good trailer, that main trailer for Rocky Balboa. And I remember being like, oh, okay, have they got... But at the same time, you were still like, is this just a great trailer? Is it going to live up to this? Like, because like you say, you've got the Conti score in there and everything like that. I remember there was in the trailer, there was some really good lines in the trailer, and obviously he had Duke back training him.
Good old hurting bombs.
Some hurting bombs. Yeah. But I don't think anything prepared for me for the emotional depth of that film, because it really, really is. Like you say, I think the great thing about the Rocky films is because most of them are written by Stallone, they represent where he is at the time with his own life and stardom, and they reflect that. And because he's at his lowest ebb, it reflects that on screen. And Rocky's at his lowest ebb as well. And he kind of speaks and lives through Rocky in terms of he's trying to reclaim his former glories in the film, just as he was in life. And I think when you look at the speeches in those films, they've really resonated.
Oh, big time.
Like, obviously that moment where it's like, there's so many moments in that film. It's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And obviously they use that in Creed as well. I think so. It's just it's become, there's moments in that film that have become iconic, like almost like transcended the film. In a way, I think, because I think some people forget about that movie in the wake of Creed. But yeah, it's amazing.
I ran the London Marathon in 2012, and the night before I watched Rocky Balboa just to get myself hyped up, and it works beautifully. Great movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Liam, what is your dream sequel?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I thought about this for a while, and I was kind of umming and ahhing because I suppose in some ways the better thing to do would be to pick something which has never had the prospect of even happening. But I did choose this because it did almost happen.
Did it?
But it but it probably never will. So I feel like it's legitimate.
Okay.
Which is Taxi Driver 2. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It's in my top 4 films of all time. It's probably my second favorite film of all time. And in 2005, I think it was, De Niro, Scorsese, and Schrader got together for a dinner, apparently, and basically put together the idea for Taxi Driver 2. And it was announced that this was a thing in like active development.
Okay.
That they were all going to get back together and do this. And very quickly, it completely dissipated, and they were like, "Oh no, we're not doing that anymore." It was really, really
they've
quick.
made Joker, so now we can't do it anymore.
Yeah. But it was really fast. Like it got announced, and then within months, it was like, no, it's not happening. And it's never kind of come up again. It's not like at a later date. You know, they've all got back together. I mean, they've all kept making films, obviously, and said, no, we will make it. It does seem like it is dead in the water. And randomly, while I was researching for this podcast, I came across Paul Schrader has actually commented on this as recent as this year.
Oh,
all right.
Because he feels like he was blamed for it not being made, because apparently the rumor came out it was because his first draft of the script wasn't considered good enough by Scorsese and De Niro. He says that's not true, and says it was all De Niro on it who really wanted the film to happen, and Martin Scorsese kind of said, well, let's come up with some ideas to basically like appease him. And both really, Schrader and Scorsese, didn't really want it to happen.
That's what I read, I think. Is that
Yeah. And then Schrader said he did come up with an idea of Travis Bickle still being alive, basically living like survivalist out as in a cabin in the woods, like sending letter bombs to people and stuff like that. And De Niro is apparently like, nah, not having that, mate. And then it just didn't happen. Apparently, Scorsese also wanted to remake Taxi Driver at one point. As part of, I don't know whether you ever heard of Lars von Trier's The Five Obstructions.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, von Trier, the filmmaker, he did this thing called The Five Obstructions, which is basically like a documentary. Obviously, von Trier was part of like the Dogma film movement, which has these very strict rules for how you got to make a film. Like, it's got to be shot on digital, all natural lighting, stuff like that. And he did this documentary where it kind of expanded on that, where he took a director and gave them these 5 obstructions to how they would make a film. And it basically limited the way they could make the film. And then each time he would like come, he'd give them one and they'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And he goes, well, here's another one. And it means you can't do that. And the guy, eventually the filmmaker would go a bit mad because they wouldn't be able to do it. Basically, they were going to do a sequel to this with Scorsese being the director he was challenging to make a film under the 5 obstructions. And apparently Scorsese was going to remake Taxi Driver with these limitations. Okay. But again, never happened. But I, as someone who, like Taxi Driver, like I say, probably my second favorite film of all time, when that was announced, I was just like, come on. De Niro, Scorsese, Schrader back together again for the return of Travis Bickle. I'm down. I'm instantly down. I'm still down. If they turned around tomorrow and went, we are doing it, I'd be like, bring it on. Like, it does, like, because it's that thing of it might be awful or anything like that. Doesn't matter. I'm just like, the idea in itself is too intriguing.
So what would be your idea? Because in my head, I've never even thought about Taxi Driver 2 for some reason.
So, obviously, and
De Niro
this
back?
is interesting.
Scorsese being done?
De Niro, everyone
Okay.
back. It would have to be De Niro, Scorsese, Schrader. Schrader, I would say, has got some odd ideas these days.
Yeah.
But I'd say he's proved that he's still got it at the end of the day as a writer. First Reformed with Ethan Hawke was a really, really fucking good film.
I watched it.
Yeah, it's very good. And he also made recently The Card Counter and Master Gardener, which are both good movies as well. So I think he's still got the talent. I think it could be maybe give him a co-writer.
Well, that would be you, Liam. So
yeah, exactly. I'll come in. I mean, I'm sure Schrader will listen to me if I come in. But it would need to be them three back together. I think that's important. But of course, Schrader has this theory, which some people do have, that Travis Bickle never actually survived Taxi Driver. Yeah. That he did die, which I've got to say is funny. It's something I only heard this theory like reasonably recently. I think of someone going like, "Oh, well, I think he died." At the end, I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it's like literally, I never even considered that for a second. Like the end of Taxi Driver, where obviously he wakes up in the hospital. There's the letter from the parents of Jodie Foster's character, who he saved, and it's kind of like he sort of gets codified as a hero for what he did. And I always just saw that as a hilarious comment on America and its gun culture and stuff like that. Because I was like, that probably would fucking happen. Like this fucking absolute nutter who goes in and like kills tons of people, like, and then gets heralded as like a hero. I can see that happening right now in America. Certainly in like kind of Trump's America as we now live in. Like I can 100% see that. True. So I never thought that was like a fantasy. Like a thing, like that, like he did actually die, and that what didn't happen. I always thought, I think that probably did happen. And then, like when there's the final scene with him in the taxi, and he has that weird moment where he kind of looks up at the windscreen, kind of looks back. I think that's just like a hint that he's still a nutter, like deep down, obviously. Yeah. So for me, there was always the obvious thing of, well, he's alive. He's still fucking crazy. So who's to say? He's kind of been like sated for now by the end of that film from that bloodbath. But at a certain point, who's to say he doesn't snap again? And so for me, the idea of returning to an older Travis Bickle who had gone on to kind of live his life, probably become more isolated and more crazy as kind of life had gone on over time, but at the same time have this weird almost cult celebrity like status for what he did, and then something to snap him again to make him do something crazy again. I found that a really interesting idea, and I think it's one of those things where when you have creators of that caliber, if they're saying we want to do something, I'm listening, guys. Like, it tells like that's its and that's why I would have been so up for it, and that's why I'm still. I think
the perfect timing would have been 2005.
Yeah, I do.
Now, what's 2024? Do you think it will still work if they came out tomorrow and said it's happened on this podcast? We've said things and it's happened. So,
I think they've missed the boat. Yeah, I think if they were gonna do it, they would have needed to do it. I think De Niro is just too old now in terms of, obviously he could still do it acting kind of like wise in terms of, I think De Niro still has the chops when he wants to. But I think for all of us who have seen The Irishman and, when there's the moment where he beats the guy up in the street and he's meant to be a far younger version of himself, and they've got the kind of dead CGI mask over his face, but yet he's beating the guy up like Mr. Burns, going like, "I'm giving you the beating of your life." I think to ask De Niro to do kind of action and stuff convincingly, which is a part of the kind of Bickle character, I think is probably a push ultimately. It's I mean, I think even like Kane and Harry Brown would have been more convincing than he would be now. I suppose there's an argument of that could be part of the whole character and the whole thing of it, that would potentially make it interesting. But I think 2005 De Niro, he's still just about young enough there to kind of pull it off. So I think they probably have missed the boat, and I would have loved to have seen it. So if I could get time capsule, an alternate timeline where they went, no, we are making that, and that came out in 2006, because that's 2006, 10 years after Heat, basically. I think that could have been something special. So yeah, it's sad to me that they probably have missed the boat on it, but I would have been up for it.
Those were Liam Dempsey's Unequal sequels. What a lovely chat.
What a lovely chat. Liam is very knowledgeable about movies, isn't he? Cool, blimey. Passionate, knowledgeable, and knows his shit, which is impressive. And that was a long one. Knows his
shit, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know what I mean. He knows movies.
He knows what he's doing. Yeah. Absolutely. And always nice when someone chooses the best sequel ever made, Empire Strikes Back. It's nice to have it twice in this series.
It's a great sequel.
Because we haven't had it before. So I can't believe it's taken us to series 6.
It's like buses. 2 come at once or whatever in the season.
Yeah.
And we waited so long for someone to talk about it or pick it, and now 2 people have picked it. And by God, it's about time.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's definitely one of the best sequels ever, and it's just great to talk about it every time. Like talking about people's experience of watching it, where they were, who they were with, the knowledge, thinking about that twist at the end, their best bits. It's a great film. I love it. And you love it as well, don't you?
I do love it. It's the best Star Wars. Absolutely.
It's the second best Star Wars.
No, it's not. And from the absolute best that we've been waiting for a while to one of the worst that we've also been waiting for someone to pick. Police Academy, I can't remember what number it is, but Mission to Moscow.
I think it's 7.
Yeah.
7.
Let's go with 7. It's poo.
It's been a while coming. I thought someone would have picked a police academy at some point.
Yeah.
And I didn't know we were going to go straight to 7. That was a bit of a shock.
It is bad, though.
Oh, it's awful. It's really bad. I'd never seen it before, I don't think. Or unless I had, I can't remember. But just seeing Christopher Lee, Ron Perlman pop up into it, that was a bizarre scenario I was put into it. Yeah, it's awful. It's so bad. It's a comedy
that's so bad I didn't even chuckle once.
You called it a comedy, and I thought that was very polite of you.
It's trying to be a comedy.
Yeah. You can see why it killed off that franchise eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been trying to kill off that franchise probably for a while with 4, 5, 6, and 7. I think definitely the first 2 are good, if I remember rightly. And then the rest are not good.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch them all, to be honest. Because it's all clouded in childhood memories for me.
And good childhood memories, mostly.
Yeah, and I enjoyed them as a child, but I was an idiot.
Yes, you are. And then we go on to Dream sequel, Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver
when
2.
this first came out, I was very sceptical. I was like, I don't think we need a Taxi Driver 2, but Liam won me round. I was on board.
I've never thought about a Taxi Driver 2, and it was interesting hearing about that. At one point, there was actually meant to be a Taxi Driver 2 with the 3 big hitters all sitting down and discussing it and thinking about it as a good idea. Yes, I like Liam's ideas, but I still like Taxi Driver. It's such a perfect Scorsese film, and De Niro's so good in it, and Jodie Foster. To be fair, we didn't even talk about Jodie Foster coming back as a character. I don't know if you would need that. That would be a legacy sequel character. Be a bit mad.
That would be.
But great picks. Thank you, Liam. If you haven't heard Liam's podcast, Spocklight, you know he hosts that with our other guest we've had this season, which is Matt Brothers. And Spocklight is a Star Trek based podcast, but it's a bit more than that. I haven't done it justice, to be honest.
Yeah,
basically they've gone through all the Star Treks, and then they watch other films that are somewhat connected to Star Trek, as in the people that are in Star Trek, their films. So I mean, look at all the people that are in Star Trek. So the world's their oyster, film wise. But the chemistry between the three hosts is really good, and like we said, Liam is knowledgeable and passionate about film. It was actually a delight to talk to him.
So passionate, it made me want to go and watch all the Star Trek movies. And I know half of them are bad. So I still want to go and watch them.
Yeah, if you want to know about his Star Trek countdown, as in his ranking, go listen to the Another Slice sequel sessions. We made Liam tell us his ranking of the Star Trek.
You're doing my job for me, Dave. You're doing my job.
I'll go back to it. And that's Liam's so good, because we literally one of those episodes we just let him talk, and not very much work for me on you in that episode. It was bloody easy to edit, to be honest. Because we didn't have to interrupt or jump in at any point. Liam just took over. It's his episode. I love it when that happens with guests, especially when they know what they're talking about. So it was great. Anyway, back to you, Rich.
Oh, well, I mean, you go. You can do it for me. It's all right. But yeah, I mean, as Dave said already, if you want to hear the sequel sessions, it is a bumper sequel session. I think we're nearly at an hour for the sequel session for this episode. So it is definitely worth your extra $2.99 a month over on anotherslice.com/unequal sequel. It will get you all the sequel sessions that we did in this season and last season. So you can get all the different sequel sessions.
And the season before, I believe.
And the season before. So yeah, it is the season before. So yeah, you'll get sequel sessions for season 4, 5 and 6 for just $2.99 a month. If you're good and you can listen to all of them in a month, I mean, that's a bonus, right?
That is.
But also, you'll get Disenfranchised and Box Set Mentality, and you'll get to hear us talk about other things and other movies, not just sequels, which, it's fun.
It's fun.
So yeah, $2.99 a month, absolute bargain. Get over there. I know some podcasts that charge you $10 for this sort of content. We're a bargain, mate. A bargain. And if $2.99 a month is not in your wheelhouse at the moment, we totally understand that. But if you wouldn't mind going on social media and telling your friends, we are at Unequal Sequel on most of the social medias. Please do share us. It costs nothing and it would really help us out. Something else that costs nothing is to hit the subscribe button, hit the auto download button. We'll drop into your pod player of choice at least once a week. And if you've got Another Slice like 4 times a week, I mean, it's crazy some weeks. But yeah, also give us a little rating, 5 stars, little hit heart, little tick. Tap us out a review. We would love that. If you want to let us know what you thought of Liam's picks, you can get in touch with us on all the social medias. Or if you don't do social media, you can get in touch with us on email. We are unequalsequel@hotmail.com. Tell us what you thought.
Lovely. Well done, sir. Yes, thank you for everyone for listening and the continuous support of season 6. We appreciate it a lot. Come back for next week's episode, which is season 6, episode 10. We really are in the end game of this season now.
I can't believe in episode 10.
It's another good one, so look forward to that. Yeah, do everything that Rich says. Support the podcast in any way you can, and you will be our heroes. Plain and simple.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've got nothing else to say, so it's a goodbye from me. Bye-bye. And it's a goodbye from him.
Bye.
See you in the next one. Sequel to this one. Have a good week. Bye. Police Academy 7.
I can't believe they made 7 of them. Honestly. It's just...
I don't know if you remember the episode, but the surprise when we found out they actually filmed it in Moscow, in Russia.
I
Mad.
know.
How did they get away with that?
Yeah, crazy.
Nearly started World War III, I think, probably. Anyway. Okay, here we go. I've been told to make a trailer, and they said to make it impactful and memorable. So here we go. My name is Dave Curtis, and I will guarantee you probably haven't heard of me, but I host a podcast called Unequal Sequel, and I love movies. Well, this is a new podcast. If you do something, it's better to do something impossible, because it feels good. Well, I've set myself a mission impossible. You'll see why that's clever in a minute. You may not know it, but Tom Cruise sends loads of people a cake at Christmas. I have set myself a quest to get Tom Cruise to send me that cake. How, you're asking? How, Dave? How is that going to happen? Well, you have to listen to the podcast and find out. That's literally what the podcast is about. It's about Tom Cruise, his career, and me getting the cake from Tom Cruise. Sounds fun, doesn't it? How about you listen along? It's called The Great Tom Cruise Cake Quest. And it will be available wherever you get your podcasts. I don't know about you, but I think I nailed that.